while Luke is getting set up, I'll go ahead and get started. Once again, we thank everybody for coming out for our talk. It's been, I think, our third talk we've had, and they've been very good, very informative. It's kind of one of the things that we want to do at Cali Commons. We want to have people come and talk about their art and just talk about the experience of being an artist. Most of you know who Luke is. But those who may not, as they always say, maybe some who may not know. Luke is one of the founders of Cali Commons. Been around 10 years. I took it over 3 years ago, and I would say Luke and Molly are great people. I'm glad to be a part of the Cali Common journey and experience. Luke is our current board member right now. He's a very talented guy. He's kind of like me, he can do multiple different things. I'll let Luke tell more about him, who may not know everything about him, but I'm just glad he was able to come and have an art talk for us in August. And let's just give a warm welcome for Luke Armstrong.
Thanks, George. I think everyone kind of knows me, but I do lots of stuff. Today I'm going to talk kind of a bit more as an artist than I usually do. I really don't even like that word sometimes because I feel like it's kind of confining and constraining, and people tend to sort of put you in a box of painting or sculpture or something when you say you're an artist. I'm gonna read the. I'm only gonna read one thing today. But I'm going to read the kind of bio that we had for this event, just kind of as a starting place, in case you didn't read it, but also just because it's going to focus me on what we're talking about for today. I have a presentation that's maybe like 15 minutes-ish, and then just generally want to open it up to questions about me, my art, or anything that comes out of this general talk about uniforms, which is super broad and could go lots of different ways. In addition, some of the artifacts from my uniform project and some of the other stuff we'll talk about is back on that table, and I have a couple pieces of art on the wall, more in the painting and kind of two-dimensional realm. So when I was asked to do this art talk, I wanted to talk about uniforms because it's been 10 years since I started my true uniform project, and it's been about 10 years since I took a really important trip. And so the uniform project is on my mind right now, and specifically the tension between unique and uniform as like concepts, because they're kind of like polar opposite in a way, but then they kind of have like natural commonality about them as well. Like they go together, but they also sort of oppose each other. Uniforms have long been seen as symbols of conformity. In many ways, they exist precisely for that function, to constrain our perceptions, to package a set of assumptions based upon the context for this given uniform. This reality sort of creates a individual opportunity to take uniform from for our own purposes, to serve as a powerful tool for personal and collective storytelling. Uniforms are more than pieces of clothing. They are vessels of memory, markers of identity, and catalysts for transformation. Our subject is not just the uniform as a garment, but as a beacon and a mnemonic device, a symbol that bridges individual and a collective identity. By challenging our own ideas, diverging from the norms we perceive, we are exploring possibility, and we are doing the hard work of generating novel possibility. And so, just kind of as a starting place, we might think of uniform as unchanging in form or character, uniform, remaining the same in all cases and all times, but The reality is a bit more complicated than that, because it's a little bit more like, for the given purpose, the uniform carries a specific context. And so like in military applications, we may see like officers wear different kinds of uniforms than an infantry person who has a functional role in the field, who maybe needs to blend in with something versus projecting a sort of authority or command, which would maybe be like an officer uniform. And in almost all military services, regardless of which country, these sort of patterns exist, and we could look at them carefully and see what they connotate and that sort of thing. We would see kind of at a local level, policemen, firemen, those sorts of folks as having a specific kind of uniform that gives you a particular context, whether that's good or bad. Usually, like in this case, they're trying to project both like approachability, but also sort of security. And it's a really fine, difficult line. And in some countries, you may see variation where certain police officers wear no weapons of any kind, or something like a tourist cop or something like that. Or you may see officers that wear, weapons that have like shiny grips or something like that. They're not functional weapons. They're supposed to show that they're important. Doctors and nurses wear a kind of uniform that implies cleanliness, implies uniformity, implies that we know what we're doing and that you should pay attention to us and believe us and such. And it does a lot to actually allow you to accept their medical advice and for that advice to sort of function properly. Religions often adopt uniforms. There's several funny things in this one screenshot, but for one, we have kind of the more kind of Buddhist folks on the right wearing a uniform that sort of says we're all the same. This isn't very important, but also you can identify us from this, and you can expect that you know something about how we practice from this uniform. And then you kind of have, like down the street, we have some Catholic folks who have different kinds of uniforms that connotate different things. And then I think even here in the center, I think it's kind of funny. There's this baseball jersey uniform thing, and there's this sort of like wearing of your religion in different kinds of ways on kind of almost like into like fashion and fast fashion now, which is very strange, I think. And then you go from that to like school uniforms, which again is about potentially removing identity, difference between children, removing the sort of some of the fodder for bullying, but also maybe allowing teachers to see all students as the same, right? Maybe there's some other things involved in that. But if we kind of take a look at all that stuff and we say, well, these are all kinds of uniforms, kinds of ways of constraining perception and linking it to a set of traits that are applied to generally a set of people. There's a kind of different kind of uniform that sort of comes from being unique and from seeing things in kind of a different way. Back on the back table back there, you'll see some of these perspective filters, and you can put them on if you want. But this is a kind of weird kind of uniform. It's a uniform way to see things differently. So we rarely can experience something that augments our perceptions in ways that is uniform. But the point of these perspective filters is to do just that. By us sharing these particular ways of seeing things, we can pretty much ensure that within a subset of possibilities, we're experiencing it pretty similarly, because we're confining the actual experiential layer that you're putting on your face. We can look at kind of maybe regalia from ceremonial garments that indigenous folks often wear. And we can say that these things are examples of things that are inherently and uniquely differentiated, but also uniform in their presentation. They mean something to the ceremony. They're very meaningful to the people who wear them. My bias is to believe that they're generally unique to the person that wears them, maybe even made by the person who wears them. And I think from that, we can get to something that is completely opposite in purpose, which is someone like Steve Jobs, who's acting in a kind of tech sector, is acting to remove complexity from his world. He's adopting a uniform that is very limited, but to reduce the cognitive load that he experiences in the world, the number of choices that he has to make around what he wears. And he also is clearly creating an identity for himself through this action. This is not my first uniform project, but my first uniform project was kind of similar to Steve Jobs. When I went to college, I sort of had a anti-capitalism sort of streak, and I decided I wanted to stop wearing things that advertised other people who were not paying me. It's kind of basically the premise. And since no one was paying me, that meant no more logos. After college, though, I didn't do a lot of uniform type things or thinking, but in 2011, I had this idea that by making a really small decision, in this case, wearing yellow socks every day for the rest of my life, I could sort of rebalance the power of the universe in a like subtle way that like in some ways couldn't be taken away from me. So it was about like choosing something. It's kind of about permission too, but it's about this kind of gray area of permission that other people can't take from you, your own activities and actions and such. And so even though like there's this subtle norm that white or black socks are kind of like the thing to be wearing, maybe there's a gray sock or two, the idea that you could sort of just say, well, it's not that expensive to buy 10 pairs of yellow socks all at the same time. It's hard to find them, but once you find them, you can easily attain them. And once you do that, every time you cross your legs or move through the world, your decision spreads to other people, right? Like they become aware of not only their ability and your ability to choose yellow socks, but also it kind of shifts the power in a way to why would you wear yellow socks and how have you sort of like come to this decision. It's really like distracting for the other person, and it is really not distracting for me. And also each morning when I put the socks on, I mean now it's been 13 years or something like that, I still feel the same amount of intentionality when I put them on, and I still feel like it was worth it, and that sort of proved to me that small design decisions in my life can matter in ways that are difficult to sort of understand when you start the endeavor, right? Like you don't know exactly how this matters, but that it matters is important. I'm gonna take a drink. Then continue with Molly's uniform here. Molly's uniform is kind of an interesting blend of several different things. Molly's my partner, if you don't know. And her uniform project is a lot like Steve Jobs, but it's a lot more interesting than that. It has elements of minimalism built into it. She's trying to reduce the complexity of her wardrobe, in part though to reduce the clutter that comes with that complexity, which is a little bit different than Steve Jobs' opinion there. Also, she's trying to not have the same look each year, but to reduce the footprint of that decision to one time a year. So each year on New Year's, she changes her uniform. She picks a new color or theme. It started kind of as colors and then turned into themes. And they give her a way of being creative, creating sort of excitement around the new year. She can see which year of her life a picture is from by just seeing a picture, which is kind of an interesting thing you wouldn't necessarily think of. She's kind of effectively upcycling things. She purchases things only from Goodwill and then often returns them to the same place that she got them. In some cases, I would say improving the garments on the way back. So like in 2017, she did blue and white stripes with yellow embroidery, which is kind of like this interesting thing where then you're returning these patterns that have, or these garments that have been improved with like hand stitch patterns and stuff. And I think it's really, I think this is like a really empowering way to see, you know, what's possible in terms of uniform. My next uniform decision came out of a trip that I took to Peru, where I had some kind of epiphanies and some really important things that I learned about myself. And when I was up on a mountain, I drew this really rudimentary picture with a saying that was important to me. And I knew that I wanted to somehow wear this and share this. But I didn't know how, even at this point, I was writing down something just quickly to get it out of my head. I knew I didn't want it to just say the thing, because the thing doesn't mean anything exactly by itself. So like I think you need the person to carry the message. And so it's more about attracting people and having them remember you so that you can deliver the message than necessarily them being able to get the message from just the shirt. So when you see it later, you will see that there isn't a giant block of text. This is where I went first. So the snake is important to the vision. The cards are sort of chance or possibility, and the arrow is pushing us forward through time. The bucket contains the words, find comfort here. And this was my original design for the shirt that I didn't end up getting printed. It ended up looking a bit more like this, which is still all those same elements are there. The arrows are still there. But if you see, there's kind of 4 snakes and they sort of are guarding this path. The find comfort here is still inside this bucket. It's just a little harder to read now. This is hand drawn versus the other one, which was digitally drawn. I went back and forth repeatedly, both hand drawing and digitally drawing, and then turning them into vector drawings and moving them back and forth. I wanted to capture these feelings of like disintegration, and also that there's some style changing here. I don't know if that was successful or not, but that was the intention. So the first year's uniform is this white one on the top right. They're back on the table back there too, so you can check them out. That was the one I started with. I wore it for a year, and then at the end of a year, I was going to sell them to people who wanted to buy them. I did sell some, and then I did that again the next year, and the blue shirt next to it here has the same basic pattern, but it's now inside of my brain. So I took a brain scan and I embedded the image that I drew inside of it. And from that year on, each year lives inside of its predecessor. So they're related. The first year, I should also say, it's a silkscreen, black only print, and then it has photographic print process on top of each one. So each one is unique. I liked that process, but it was really time consuming for me. And some of them didn't come out as well as I'd hoped. I was really it was laborsome and disappointing overall. And so I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So I switched to this white on dark pattern, and I started using markers to color the shirts. So the markers would have different patterns, and so the shirts would change over time. And then as I wore them, the ink would wash off, and then I would marker them up again. And so it created this kind of perpetually changing shirt, which I really like. The following year, this black shirt year, there's no more variation in color. There are actually also 3 more colors in this kind of brain shirt year. in the black shirt year, there's a face that emerges. It's looking down into a bucket. The bucket is important for my experience on the mountain in Peru. And my brain is dissolving inside of the bucket. And so I'm looking over the bucket from the top down, and you can see my reflection in the bucket. And then the fourth year, my head is not in the bucket, and the bucket is behind me, and all this stuff is behind me. And I'm sort of moving into the future. And in the fifth year, I only printed one, and you can tell this is also that photographic process. You can tell it loses a lot of steam over the years. And so there's not much of it remaining. It wasn't really bright before, and it kind of was the intent because it's the only one I ever printed is just this singular shirt. I didn't need any more at that time. I stopped selling them after the second year because I didn't really want to sell them. I was going to just sell the old year so that I always had the new year, and then I would keep doing that forever. But then I sort of felt like I didn't know if I had something to say forever. I didn't know if I wanted to trap myself into that pattern. And I also just had a lot of shirts, and I was sort of like, I don't want to keep making new shirts. And so then on the fifth year, when I made this one, I decided that I would just rotate all the shirts and just wear them all until they basically wear out. And if they ever wore out, then I would maybe reprint them or something at that time. And so that's where we are today. I'm going to post the video of this online, so no one here has to feel like you're the only people who will ever see this. But if you're interested, I'm going to actually print this shirt this time. I'm going to describe it a little bit, but it's going to come with markers, and basically you're going to be able to color your own shirt. And you can scan to pre-order. I'll probably sell them for about a month before I actually make them. They'll work just like the black shirts in the back. So white ink, color on them with markers. You'll get a couple markers with the shirt. I haven't picked the marker colors or anything. If you have thoughts on that stuff, you can talk to me about it. The shirt, since I described the other ones, the fourth year shirt is in the front, third, second, first. These are bubble universes, and they're just kind of bubbles floating through the world. And if I make any change to this is the actual design I did. This back bubble, I left it really white because I wanted to force myself and other people to color it in. But sometimes when I look at it, it bothers me. So I might fix it a little bit before I release it. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. If anyone has any questions or thoughts or uniforms that you like to wear?
I just have a question about your new T-shirt. The biggest bubble, is that just shading and stuff in there? There's no.
I see a face.
I
I see a face with glasses, and I see you.
Yeah, it is a face class.
Okay.
It is me. It's the. I'm gonna grab one of these. This blue year, the fourth year. It's a good question.
Oh, yeah.
So it's this face here. And some of the artifacts are supposed to, like, it's kind of an interesting and delicate thing to try to put these, which are already kind of like wood blocky inside of a bubble structure. And so some of the artifacts are almost like the little wispy color lines in the bubbles. And some of it is the shirt. And again, I want some of the crispness to disappear each time. So there's also a degree of which I'm trying to change it a little bit.
Have you experienced any stretches of time where the uniform felt like an obligation? And if so, how do you navigate it? Is it something to resist or something to overcome, or is it meaningful? Does that ever come up?
I designed it to be particularly flexible. So, like if I have a wedding or a funeral or something like that, those are the most uncomfortable moments. But then I have a flexible set of rules that just say I can wear anything over it that I want to, and then that pretty much solves it. I also don't have specific rules about my legs, and I wear plenty of like jackets and sweaters and things, hats. None of this stuff is part of the uniform exactly. Although, if I am experimenting actively with the uniform, the hat is the thing that I've been playing with this year because I think it can attract people, like attention in a way that's useful for me. And also, what I like about the hat is that I can take it on or off. And so, like, when I want to be people-y, I can put on a people-y hat that brings people to me. And when I don't feel like it, I don't have to do that. The white shirts are more flexible in terms of wearing things. Does that make sense? That's how I dealt with it.
I see what we do in our daily lives slightly different. So I think that we align in that what we, like the choices that we make, the small choices we make every day, articulate our identity and articulate our relationships in the world, and in some way shape the world that we're living in. And so I think that it's interesting because I feel like I align with your project in terms of things like environmentalism, like I'm making a choice about, like shopping at the thrift store, for example, or walking to work every day, like trying to get a daily routine in. And I don't really articulate it or advertise it unless I'm sort of directly asked. And I think that you two are sort of the same in this way. And I don't know when I found out about your uniform, but like, I mean, I wear a lot of strange stuff, and so I think that maybe it comes up or something. I don't really know, but at some point, like the three of us talked about this, and I learned about your uniforms. So I'm just wondering, like, in what way do you articulate this identity or this vision to other people, and how does that then facilitate relationships or the way that you move through the world?
So I think right now it's like it's an organic way to grow into a conversation that is uncomfortable.
Okay.
So like there's a whole bunch of things that we do and have done that I think are inherently challenging for other people that don't actually mean to be as like we mean it to be challenging at a societal level potentially. Like it's okay to be a bit instigating. But I think it isn't my desire at least to be specifically challenging to a person's beliefs.
Yeah.
Like that don't want those beliefs to be changed or something like that.
Right.
So like the nice thing about the uniform is that it sort of sneaks up on you and you figure it out over time, and that like provides enough space and surface area to get to know someone well enough, or even if it is a big jump for them to not be so put off that they can't hear it or consider it. Or, and I think it's interesting because just the general routine and ritual and like what we wear is one of the more visible forms of ritual to others.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly if we're careful about the patterns we produce.
That's a good point, Luke, because I know like from a cultural standpoint, depending on where you live, kind of determines how you dress. You know, people from the East Coast dress different from those from the West Coast, those from the Mid Coast. So you just kind of know based off the clothes, kind of where they're from, even to the point where you might even know the neighborhood they're from. So I mean, we do that sometimes, but we don't even realize we do it just because of our culture where we come from.
Yeah, it's easy for us to forget about it too when we're in other places. Molly reminded me of a time when we were in Amsterdam, when we were talking about this before. We went into a shop, we were there, and it was like a silly shop that we would Yes, it's a carpet store, and you never see a carpet store here unless you're here. So, you know, carpet store. But the person called out from the back in Dutch and then like barely looked and then in English said, hello.
Immediately.
Because they could tell immediately from our clothing that we were from America, like in a few
Uh-huh.
seconds. Bright colors.
Casual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the sourcing of the t-shirt material itself significant, and has it evolved year to year?
Yes, but I think I haven't. So yes, but I think I would say that I would like to go further than I've done so far. But initially, I bought the first ones, the white ones, are just like 100% cotton, and they're the upside of that is that they are pretty environmentally friendly on the whole. These ones are blend, and the downside is that they're less good for the environment. But the upside is that I don't buy new ones. So it's sort of like an offsetting thing where I try to wear them until they absolutely have holes in them, and it's kind of my bargain with it. And they feel, the other thing is they feel really nice and they look nicer. And I think the conflict I have is I know now that there's a subset of other possibilities, and in this version, the shirts are a little more expensive. I'm not trying to exactly make money. I'm just trying not to lose money. So I'm going to try to source better shirts this time, particularly if I can find like a rayon or and that's like less synthetic. I think that would be better for fit and feel and this like long-term durability and still like maintain a lot of the other stuff that's good. But it's almost always a trade-off and all that stuff, and so it's like it's kind of one of those things where the deeper you dig, the more frustrating it becomes. And I do have an affinity for buying things from America that are sourced from good materials, and so that's also maybe worth another look. When I did the sock project originally, it was my goal to only get socks from the United States and source all my clothes from the US, and I actually found it quite difficult. I could find sports garments sometimes in the US. The first box of socks that I had on there are really high, knee-high socks, and those were made in the US, but I had a real hard time finding like any sort of lightweight socks. The closest I could get was Turkey, and they had like kind of like a fair trade like thing where you could guarantee that the workers would be treated well, and that was like about as good as I could do when I first started. So.
I'm just thinking as you were doing the talk, I'm trying to make clear in my own head like what the difference between uniform and fashion. And so I'm like, well, you say, well, everything you wear is your uniform, whatever. It seems like it's maybe repetition. So many people are wearing the same thing, or you're wearing the same thing many days in a row. So the constancy of repetition. And it seems like a lot of what maybe you're drawn to, I'm guessing, about uniform is the stability. That you can just rest in the uniformity. It's like, oh, that's taken care of. We're done with that. We don't have to worry about it. So I can see why the uniform project would be, I can see how it would benefit you and how you would be very aware of it because you're experiencing it, you're in it, right? But I'm wondering how much other people, and that's the repetition thing again, other people have to see you repeatedly to catch on that there's a repetition. And frankly, if you hadn't already told me about it, I don't know how many years I would know you before I would catch on to that.
5 or so over here.
Well, right, if it never came up, I'm wondering, it seems, I guess what I'm wondering is the difference between, and I think these are both valid things. Some works are for the artist, other works are for the audience, and some are for both. Now, at this point, I would classify yours as mostly for you and the people who are close to you. I see that a lot where people will make a work and then they'll explain it to everyone else around them. And I think, yes, but that is in the work.
Mhm. Sure.
So like explanatory labels, when you go to the museum, they tell you all about it. Like, well, if that was important, it should be in the work. And so I'm wondering about that, whether you simply view, people tend to, they just enlarge their definition of the work. The work is the uniform and talking about it. Like, that's the work. That's a performative, like, and more than just wearing it, performative and talking about it. Okay, I'll go along with that. So it means I need to hear you talk about it in order for me to get it. But I guess I'm used to maybe non-performative works that try and throw literature at it or try and throw explanation at it to make it seem like it's doing something it isn't actually doing. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I think those are, first off, that's an excellent observation, and that's interesting. It's also really interesting just looking back on it, because it makes total sense from here. But like, if you would have experienced the uniform project alongside of me, it would have also been different, because the first 4 years, I literally only wore that one shirt. So the white shirt never got worn again until the 5th year, when I started wearing everything again. So there was actually a lot more uniformity in those years. And so it would have been a lot easier to notice I was wearing a uniform, because I would have worn a white shirt every day for the first year. So that year, people really did notice that I was wearing a uniform. But I started introducing variation, because I had to constantly explain why I was wearing literally the same shirt, because they didn't perceive any difference. Right? Like, there actually is a difference between the shirts, but they're like, are you wearing the same literal shirt every day? No, I'm not. You know, I bathe and I wash my clothes, you know.
So you get tired of explaining the thing that was irrelevant.
So the second year I introduced variation in color, but the pattern stays the same. So red, green, blue, and a third indigo color. The red, green, and the blue only repeat a little bit. The indigo is by far the most prevalent shirt. So there's a constancy, but there's a other element that kind of comes up. In the third year, I varied none of the color, but only the sleeves. And so there are long sleeves, medium length sleeves, there are V-necks, and there are regular necks. And so the actual shirt changes, but the pattern does not change. And then in the 4th year, there's a gray and a blue shirt. That was my least favorite. But I would wear a lot of times both the shirts. So the gray shirts became the long sleeve shirt underneath the blue shirt, and the blue shirt long sleeve underneath the gray shirt. And so I started kind of experimenting with layers of the same shirts, which then by the time I got to the 5th year and started cycling everything, gave me kind of a 90s feel.
But to go back to my question, is the artwork
yeah.
then mostly for you, or is it really, or as far as being for other people, it's really for just the people who are closest to you to get to watch you do it over years and years and years, and that's the audience?
It's for me primary, yes.
Right.
And then secondary, it's for the people who are closest to me. But I would say it's to bring people close to me. So the people who are on the periphery, those are the people who will like be continually brought in. Like the people who I meet at networking spaces, right? They see me 2 or 3 times. And the point of the show, if it has a point, is to make me noticeable, to make me approachable, to make you want to talk to me. The reason why I'm standing out to you, you don't actually know the reason. Like you're not supposed to know. There's something weird that's happening.
Is quietly making something happen that they don't know.
Exactly.
You said that's like my people-facing hat. I remember thinking, why would you without a hat be not people-facing? You know, like I'm not sure if I understand.
So this
or agree that one thing is more public. I think maybe because you put it all on, you think I'm public mode now. That makes sense. Versus I'm not public mode.
No,
So
the hat is like literally this hat, and so the thought line of this hat is like the combination of the eye and the placement and the arrow is the thing. There's like a you know how you're talking, I'm gonna delve into a conversation. I don't know what those notes are about this. When we were talking the other day, you were talking about like how some things are inherent and aren't not arguable, right? Like, I would argue that this particular symbol has, and then not just this format, but the eye roughly in this vicinity has thousands of years of prehistory. It makes people behave in a way that they can't help but behave in that way. And so for me, it brings people to me, it tells them about me that I see things, right? However you wanna put that together. And that the person who occupies this hat is saying that about themselves. The arrow is down instead of up, which if it was up, it would mean something different potentially, maybe not discernible to the audience. I think, but that's what I like to play with, right? Like these ideas of very universal symbols, and so even in the Peru trip, right? I was alluding to an ayahuasca journey. If I go a level below that, one might say that the snake is an inherent symbol of this. And so there are layers of things that can be recognized in the right people for the right reasons. And so it's sort of a filtering mechanism and a trust building mechanism for shared concepts.
Yeah, just for finding the right people.
For finding the right people.
That makes no sense.
And also the time. I would like to not have to do that part, but also I like to talk, and I think I would like to do more talks in the future. So I don't know. Sometimes I do feel like talking is the art.
It is one of them, certainly.
Good for James.
Do you feel like this has similarities with like tattoos? Do you feel like that?
That's similar to that.
Yeah, I think it does.
Conversation starters.
Yeah.
Also symbolic, something
Symbolizing.
you're carrying
Don't
with
talk
you,
Yeah, memorializing a symbol.
right? Something that nobody can take away from you.
It's also usually, these are, and they usually are objective in nature. If you look at my artwork, generally speaking, even if you see objects in them, they're not there. Like, they weren't placed there intentionally to be a thing. And these things are intentionally. So for me especially, this kind of work is laborious. Like, I don't usually make objective things. The shirts are way harder for me to make than any of the other pieces I ever make, because I fiddle with them and I don't like them, and I can't draw a fucking snake to save my ass, you know? Like, it took like 100 snakes to get the snake I wanted, you know? Like, it's not my, like, tattoo artists are really like specialized. They're really good at that, you know?
Symbolism.
Yeah, symbolism. And I am like the opposite. Like, Renaissance art history was super hard for me. Like, what is an allegory? This is so difficult. Just say what you mean. Why do we have to bring dogs into this?
I'm glad you brought up Steve Jobs. So I know that there's a tech culture around this idea of a uniform. Like, I read a book where a fictional character had the same shirt she wore every day. And she's like a programmer, and that's her operandi. And then Theranos, disgraced.
Oh, yeah,
Elizabeth
yeah.
Holmes was like trying to emulate Steve Jobs, and she had the same thing that she wore, and she had a look, like a specific look that she did every day. Can you put yourself into this context? Like, I think that articulate how you see your relationship with this unique uniform kind of thing in the context of what I perceive as a larger trend.
Yeah, no, I'm very aware of that, and I agree with a lot of the tech people, and I think probably some of the people who promote those ideas I like as well sometimes. Like, I like Timothy Ferris, for example, even though he's a very nice character, and I like all of his ideas, but I think he would very much like this idea, you know. I think a lot of the agile thinking that comes from development and the design thinking that comes from design spaces kind of both lead us to minimizing elements that are not valuable, and they can get a little bit over the top, especially in the tech world, you know, like a little too optimizing, a little too much measurement. In fact, in the past, I drove myself kind of crazy doing experiments where I was measuring myself. Like right now, it's really popular. People like, I forget what the word is, but basically means like you can watch your heart rate on your wrist and kind of make real-time decisions about whether you're feeling stressed. I can't do that. I had a Fitbit in like 2009 that was all fancy and had a heart rate monitor thing. And I found that I got into perpetual loops, race conditions with myself because I would see my heart racing and then it would make my heart race more. And I was like, I gotta get rid of this thing. So I think there's some dead ends that live in that space. And I think a lot of tech people burn out in really like spectacular ways and sometimes really sad ways.
That's right.
Like the Zappos guy, for example, or whoever. So over optimization is a thing, but reduction of overhead for something that is seen as unvaluable, I think, is the through line, right? And then to the degree that they actually care about what they look like, I think they're borrowing something from almost like real estate and service industry, which is like, if you can do something that helps people to remember you, that always is valuable inside of like a networking environment. And it's a really simple thing, probably like Dale Carnegie and those kind of older shake hands, kiss baby folks.
I was gonna ask you about that earlier. I mean, you're, if you were the only one wearing that uniform, you are inverting the other purpose of uniform, which is to make you lose your personality. You're like, no, I have a singular personality uniform of one, right? It's more of a, well, that was part of the thing you were saying earlier, but more of a way of saying, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
Look at me. Remember me. I mean, if you ever watch sometimes they'll throw on the YouTube or whatever, it'll be like New York Street in 1972. You see all the people walking and it's everywhere. You're like, did they go to the same stylist? They all look like they went to the same person. Like, how did they all get together? And part of it, of course, is they do not want to attract attention. So whatever anyone else is wearing, they're like, well, let me just wear something like that. And they don't want to stand out. They don't want people to be pointing at them. So this is sort of is using clothing to do the exact opposite. To say, no, I want to stand out. I want you to notice me. I want to be memorable. Of course, yeah, fashion can be used in both ways.
Uniforms can be used in both ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think ritual can be used in those ways
Yeah.
generally too. So I think the tech people, the other thing that they're doing is they're using ritual really effectively to hack their lives. Again, sometimes very effectively and for good reasons, and also sometimes really detrimentally to their own ill will and probably societal ill will, like cascading badness for all of it.
It's like a guy who decided he would make his own like a dietary supplement where he didn't have to eat anything but this.
Yeah.
And he did that for a while, and then he tried to eat actual food and he got really sick. And he was like, oh, he was like, yeah, it sounded good in practice, but was it terrible? Or it sounded good in theory, but it's terrible in practice.
Yeah. Was it the
Not
heel?
naive. Yeah.
Good experiment. Keep eating real food. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting a moment ago when you were talking about, like, I don't know if biofeedback is the same as what you were saying about the Fitbits.
Yeah, I think that's what I was looking for.
Because what you're doing is, like, in a way, it's both an analog to that, and it's truly analog, but it's also kind of an antidote to that. So when you started out saying, like, they can both oppose each other and kind of mimic each other, and I'm just paraphrasing, that's not like exactly what you said, but I'm thinking about what you're doing in the dimension of you're doing something to your body, like, because didn't like go there yet, but we could, like, you're doing this thing to your body, like it's your clothing, but it's not just that. And the biofeedback is like you hold something constant, you have some kind of standard or metric, and then you're comparing what you're doing to that. And you were saying about get yourself in a loop with your heart rate, you can get micro data and all these things on a Fitbit. You're like stretching that out into this like zoom out view of the universe to the slowness and, as you said, like the very intentional creation and design of the shirt, and then you commit to it, for a year. So it reminds me of that, like biofeedback stuff, but the scale is like you completely zoomed out, like when you see, I don't know, I was thinking of fractals, like the idea that you have some kind of consistent pattern, and I'm just thinking out loud here, but the scale is so different, and you slowed it completely way down. Like you could say it's an antidote to biofeedback, or you could say, no, it's exactly that, but you slowed it down so much that it's like when you take a song and you slow it to, however few beats per measure you could possibly do, and people like you can measure, like they don't cognitively recognize it as the same melody until it gets to a certain tempo. It seems like you almost like took the digital obsession with biofeedback and you slowed it down to a scale where it is both analog to and antidote to like the digital fast. Like what happens if I do this to my body? What happens if I tweak it just a little bit? And then what happens in like, you're basically generating data if you want to think about it that way, but it is completely like slowed it down to snail's pace.
I feel like it aligns both to like kind of slow design and its general like qualitative research, and just like I wonder if there's a different kind of research, maybe you have the right word for it, but like what it feels like to sort of understand things is like even slower than general qualitative research, where it just like slowly grows inside of you, those different stuff. And I grabbed this shirt again because of something you just said, which is because I forgot to mention that it has words in this one. I assume that people can pick that up, but I actually don't really know because I'm so used to it. But it says I am a friend. It says it backwards so that when I look in the mirror, I remember that I am my own friend and that I'm a friend to other people. Because I'm sometimes challenging to people, it's difficult for me to remember that even when I upset people, a lot of times, like it was well intentioned and tomorrow things will be better. And so like it's sort of kind of a tight feedback loop to sort of reinforce that like a feeling that I want to generate in myself. And I would say that that part of this shirt, even though there are parts of the shirt I don't like, that part I really do like. It was the first shirt that I put a message large enough to read in, and I didn't want to. I still am kind of thinking about your question, but I didn't want to just have a message that was obvious in there, and so I again obscured it by reversing it. And I could really just someday do just a message that's clear and clean, but I haven't so far.
I can see why if it's working for you, you would want to keep it in that more private sphere for you and the close people, and not sort of do anything that makes you get overwhelmed by what everyone else is, their feedback, what they think, and then you kind of lose.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I don't think I want criticism. Like this isn't an invitation for criticism. This is an invitation for you to understand me or something. Like it's a gift, and you don't have to accept it. But like, yeah, like I think the reason why I didn't want to maybe be bold about the message itself was that I didn't want to have to defend the message. Right? That the idea of find comfort here for me was like, again, this is not.
Well, there's more than that in the shirt. The words are. And you don't want to reduce it to that. Right?
Correct. Yes. Exactly. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah,
and any questions.
Is this on your webpage or?
It will be, and I'm going to share it on Facebook and some other places. So.
We were live, and I just posted this.
Okay. Thanks, George.